So in this video, we are going to talk about dabbling. We are going to talk about decision making, and we are going to talk about how you make a choice, whether it's within your business or even on what kind of business to do. How do you decide what freelancing profession is best for you or what kind of path you want to go down? And we're going to talk about making those decisions, how you do it, some of the psychology there, as well as dabbling, the worst enemy of any entrepreneur, especially us. I'm an ENFP. I don't know if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, but if you're an ENFP and INFP, someone who likes variety, you like adventure, probably if you're someone who likes to travel a lot and see new places, you also like variety, right? And newness, which can be really tough to deal with in business because you'll often want to do new things which aren't necessarily good for your bottom line, and then end up dabbling a lot. So if you're someone who feels like you have multiple balls in the air at all times, that you're kind of out of control, maybe you feel like you're working a lot, but you're not producing anything. You're getting up early, you're putting in your hours, you're listening to your Tony Robbins, you're focused, but you're not producing. Nothing's really happening. I think this video is going to explain to you why that is and what's going wrong. As you probably know already, I'm a big proponent of freelancing, consulting, and coaching as the right route to freedom and location independence. Whether that means working from home or working from around the world, that's up to you. But one of the biggest questions that comes up to me is, how do you actually choose? There's so many freelancing options available, coaching and consulting. I mean, that could do thousands of different things. How do you actually make a decision and choose? Now, there isn't some magical process. I can't give you a 5-minute, okay, tick these boxes, do this test, and you'll magically know what you should do. But what I want to do in this video is give you a way of thinking that will help you actually make that decision and get started. And it's a way of thinking that has helped a lot of people make that big leap. Now, whether or not you already know which area you want to specialize in or what you want to do for your own business, you're going to find this video helpful as a tool for decision making, because you can apply the same lessons here to other areas of decision making, whether it's what part of your industry you want to niche in, whether it's deciding on a marketing strategy or how you're going to get new clients. You can use the same process there. Now, when I got started freelancing, I didn't have the luxury of indecision. And what I mean by that is I was broke. I was seriously broke. I had went through a total business failure. And when I started freelance copywriting, I didn't have more than, $40 to my name. I'm not even kidding you. And that was from working a one-off shift at a bar the night before. And I made the decision that I needed to earn money, and I needed to earn money using my brain. I was not a day labor type of guy. I wasn't blessed with, shall we say, the ability to make a ton of spreadsheets and a ton of charts and evaluate all my options. I made a pretty quick decision looking at what was I good at, what did I enjoy, and kind of what were my options, and then just jumped into it. And there's an article some of you have read that I talk about how I got my first clients within 72 hours. And it was through using this Facebook note and just putting it up there and literally needing to work, needing the money, and not having the luxury of indecision. Now, why can't all of us do that? Why can't I do that normally? I was only able to do that because of my circumstances. Day to day, it's not something I'm normally able to do. Well, there's a reason that we can't always be 100% on decisions. We now live in a world where there's so many choices, so many options, whether we're talking about dating or business for that matter, that a lot of us get overwhelmed by indecision. A lot of us find ourselves with so many choices that it's really hard to just pick one, because what about this one? What about this one? What are we missing out on by choosing something? And because of that, it's very hard for a normal, rational, intelligent person to ever feel 100% about a decision. You can never make enough spreadsheets, enough pros and cons lists, or talk to enough people to really ever be 100% on something. The way that people become 100% or very confident in a decision is usually through their gut instinct. It's a feeling, it's not a thought. It's coming from just an inner knowledge of, yeah, this is the right thing for me. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it. And I don't know if you've watched, it's called Shark Tank in the US, it's called Dragon's Den everywhere else in the world. It's a show where you have 5 investors and they basically hear pitches for businesses and they make a decision. One of the things you'll notice on the show is how quickly they're able to make decisions often in terms of trusting their gut. This is, no, not a good one, this is good. And it's based on their gut instinct, which is based on experience. So if our gut instincts play a role in how we can make confident decisions, how do we build our gut? Well, that becomes a bit of the problem, right? The only way you get a really good gut instinct is from experience. The more things you do, the more you learn about yourself and about the world, and the more you're able to feel and really know something rather than just sort of factually know it. Yeah, that seems like the right thing. It's going from your head into your body. And when you do that, you're able to make decisions a lot quicker, and you're able to really believe in them and follow through. You don't have that dabbling, that indecision, that second guessing yourself nearly as much. Now, when it comes to business, how do you get the gut instinct if you're just starting out and you don't have the experience? How do you trust yourself when you've never really trusted yourself before? So what I want to propose to you today is a different way of making these decisions. It's not about being 100%. It's about being 70%. I call it the 70% rule. And here's how it works. It's really complicated. If you are 70% or more sure of a decision, whether that's what freelancing role to go down, whether that's a new marketing strategy, whether it's any kind of business or sort of decision in your life where you don't have all the facts and you'll never have all the facts. If you're at least 70% sure, then do it. Make the decision and you can adjust down the road if you need to. But what happens when you decide at 70%, what you're doing is you're trusting your gut. And the more you trust your instincts, the more you trust your gut, the better they get, right? If you never use a muscle, it's not going to develop. I'm not going to get into some whole gym analogy about if you don't do push-ups, you don't, whatever. But there's a practical nature to it. One of the things I've noticed with my coaching clients is that the people who are all in other words, they don't have a job, they don't have another income, they are focused on their business exclusively, they tend to learn quicker and progress faster, not only because they have more time, but because they're committed to their decisions. And so they're so invested in what they're doing, they learn quicker. It's the same thing in school, right? When do you learn faster? When some teacher's telling you random things, or when you're doing hands-on experiments and learning and really getting feedback from what you do? And so you can't treat the business world like a classroom. You can't just read books and books over and over and think you'll get answers. You need to do. You need to take action. And the 70% rule is my way of doing that. It's getting enough certainty in the decision to feel good about it, to know that based on what you know at the time, it's the right choice, and then to go with it, and then you'll learn and adjust. So one of the big benefits of the 70% rule is you're banking experience. The more you act and the more you fail, and trust me, I failed more than just about anyone. I can guarantee you we could trade stories all night if you want. The more you fail, the more you learn about yourself and the better your next decision will be. And so say you have 2 people, right? And they're both contemplating a career as a freelance writer. And person number 1, let's call him Bob, because Bob is the name I always give fictional people. We have Bob. Person number 2, we have Michelle. Now, Bob is a very rational decision maker. Bob needs to be 100% on everything before he gets started. So Bob's thinking about this and he's making his pros and cons list, and he's still working his day job. He hates his day job. He's not learning anything. He's not saving a lot of money. He's just getting by with it, but it's filling a lot of his time. He doesn't want to quit though because he's human. And we all have a fear of change, right? We all have a fear of new things and the unknown. It's just how we are, right, as people. So Bob sticks at his job and he keeps doing these pros and cons lists and reading books and looking at blogs and trying to get all the advice. So one day it can be perfect. The decision can be made for him. Now Michelle, on the other hand, she's following the 70% rule. So she has her day job. She does not enjoy it. It's not paying her bills beyond her bills, right? There's no savings, there's no luxury there. And Michelle gets pretty sure she wants to be a freelance writer. She's not 100%. She doesn't quite know how she's going to get all her clients, how that's going to work. She doesn't know maybe if she's better off doing copywriting, like direct marketing sales, or doing ghostwriting for books. She's not sure yet. But she knows that writing is her thing, and she knows it's a really appealing freelance profession because she can work from wherever. So you have these two people, and on day one here, Michelle says, screw it. She's the gutsy one. She's jumping in. She quits her job. She gets started on this, right? 6 months go along. Bob still working the job. Michelle realizes, damn, freelance writing, not exactly what I was expecting, right? Not exactly the right fit for me. So she decides to make a shift because as she was doing freelance writing, she realized that a lot of her clients needed help with the branding side, actually what they wanted to be written about, who they were, kind of their brand identity. And Michelle really enjoyed helping them with that part of the writing. Remember, Bob still hanging out at his job now. So we're at the 6-month mark. Now, Michelle managed to break even on the writing, like she's not going into massive debt or anything, but it just wasn't for her. So she starts to adjust a bit. And now rather than doing writing, she's doing branding work. And she makes that adjustment. Now she finds out over the next 6 months that branding is not quite as easy as she thought in terms of getting clients, but it is what she enjoys more. So she keeps doing it. Now we move a year forward here. Michelle, though, she knows branding, she likes it, but there's something kind of missing, and she realizes that she wants to add kind of an additional service and change a little bit. And actually what she wants to focus on is how people design their brand in terms of social media and how they kind of put their best face forward while still being authentic and human and all that fun stuff we like, right? So she adjusts again. Now, move forward 2 years later. We've got Bob here. We haven't talked about Bob a lot. Do you know why? Because Bob hasn't done a lot. Bob has been reading business books. He's been talking on forums. He's been fantasizing about this life. But guess what? He hasn't earned a dime working for himself, and he hasn't done anything. And worst of all, Bob doesn't know anything about himself any more than he knew 2 years later. If anything, he's more confused after all the reading. Now, on the other hand, we have Michelle. Michelle first went with the 70% rule, and she figured out, damn, writing's not for me. Like, I do not like sitting alone kind of at a cafe working. It's just not my thing. So she changed, and she adjusted to what she really liked, which was more interacting with the clients. And then she realized that was too hard of a business to get clients for her. So then she adjusted again. Now, 2 years out, Michelle's had some struggles. She's had some failure. She's had some very stressful days. But guess what? Michelle knows herself so much more than she did when she started out. And she now has that clarity. She now knows what she wants to do and has a really focused in business model 2 years in, which is based not only on some test about what her strengths are and what she thinks she should do, but based on real world experience. And now 2 years in, she has a rock solid plan. She knows herself inside and out, and she is poised for great success. Bob here, still reading some business books. Now, I love writing books. I love reading books. I love people reading the books that I write. I'm not saying don't read books. I'm not saying don't think and contemplate, but don't sit on the sidelines. Jump in. And when you jump in, that's when you get the real feedback that will tell you about yourself and what you need to do, what you need to know in order to succeed. And following the 70% rule so far is the best way I've been able to figure out to do it. So while we're talking about decision making, maybe we should take a little bit of time to talk about dabbling. Now, dabbling is what happens when you're okay to make a decision, but it's not really a decision. You're not really committed to it. You're being open to it, or you're trying it out without really jumping in. Now, dabbling can create terrible problems for business people. So where dabbling comes from is it's all tied back to our own confidence and our own commitments. And what happens is when we make a decision, we have a certain amount of confidence in that decision, right? Whether it's 70% or 80% or 100%, whatever it is. Now, over time, things can happen that either increase our confidence in that decision. I'm sure you've had the experience where you've bought something, a new phone or a watch, a pair of shoes, and you liked it, and then you loved it kind of a week or a month later, right? I've had that at least, where you really like something more, so your confidence increases in the decision. But it can also happen the opposite way, and this is very common when you decide to work for yourself, because there's so many factors going after us, right? When you're working for yourself, you have a few main, I don't want to call them negative factors, but negative factors, let's call them that, why don't we? So you have the opinions of others, right? Which is often doubtful, especially when you're starting out. Friends, family, just people you kind of meet. They're not trying to be negative to you, but they're often just expressing their own doubts, or maybe they wanted to work for themselves and so they were too scared to, and they created this illusion in them that it's impossible, they could never do it, and they project that onto you, right? Bosses, co-workers, they obviously want to keep you at your job, so they're going to project some negative stuff as well, right? So you have that, which is going to be subtly eroding your confidence day in and day out. Now, that alone would be okay if working for yourself wasn't sometimes really hard, right? When you're working for yourself, you have good days, you have awesome days, and you have really bad days, and you have everything in between. And on those bad days, when you come up against struggles, when things are not going as well as you'd like, that is when your confidence can start to be eroded. And you throw that in with other people's judgments without having a solid support system of people to like keep you going, it can erode that confidence below that 70% level or less. And that's when people kind of start to dabble. They maybe pull back and they say, hey, I'm just going to browse the job site, see what could be available. What if I just took a part-time job and tried that as well? And the important thing here is, one is being aware of this, that this is going to happen, that this is normal. Any entrepreneur who tells you that they don't have days where they doubt everything, where they can't get out of bed hardly, where they don't second guess themselves, is lying to you or been through some crazy brainwash personal training. We all have those moments and those days of doubt. And the difference between the people who keep going and the people who get stuck dabbling is when you don't have something to pull you through that doubt. When your confidence dips below the level it needs to be, you need something there to pull you through. In my case, it's kind of a nerdy thing I'm going to share here, is I am a total Rocky fan. Love the hell out of that guy. And especially I actually love Stallone in terms of his own life story of struggle and getting started as not only writing Rocky, but also starring in it. And there's a quote from him. There's a long story I won't share here, but he was as poor as you could get and turned down significant amounts of money for his script because he wanted to star in it. And they would not buy it with him starring in it because he was a no-name actor who was ugly, spoke funny, all these things they said about him. And he just refused. He turned down $100,000 when he was broke. He could not, nothing. He couldn't pay his bills. He actually sold his dog because he couldn't afford to feed him and he needed the money to eat himself. That's how broke he was. But he refused to take this money because his dream was to star in the movie and become an actor. And so eventually, that's what happened, as we all know, and the rest is history. And that there's a quote he said about, I'm going to butcher it here, but that he knew if he took a job that he would get soft and he would lose that fire, that he needed to make life hard so that he would be so driven to reach his dreams. And that's a really good example. That's something that stuck with me when I was going through hard times starting out freelancing and would browse a job site from time to time and sort of think about it, like, oh, maybe I could. And then I'd remember that. And I knew for me that if I were to take a job and things were to get really comfortable, that it would kill that fire of I want to work for myself. I want to be designing my own life, not, working under somebody else. So you need something that will keep you on track. You need to plan for the worst, right? If you assume it's going to be rosy, you assume it's going to be great the whole time, then when it gets bad, you're not going to be ready. And the risk is to quit or to start working another job on the side or to do all this different stuff, which is all going back to dabbling in my vocabulary at least. And that's not cool, right? Because we are here to help you have as much freedom as possible and to be working for yourself. And that means not going back to work some job that you clearly don't want to work anymore. So what you want to do is you want to build in a system for yourself that will keep you on track. And there's different ways to do this. There's accountability to yourself and to others. This can be done publicly as well. But putting something out there where you have a group of people holding you accountable to stay on track. Having a support system is really good, whether that's from yourself or in terms of, like, for me, my support was kind of myself formed in these beliefs from Rocky and from whatever, right? Of this is what's going to keep me going. But the support system can be yourself. It can be other people. You also want to sort of give yourself a clear timeline and just consciously think through, okay, I'm going to start this. It might take 2 months before I'm rolling on the beach with gold coins being tossed in the air, or it might take a year or two. And during that time, there might be some struggles and there might be some hardships. And create a vision for yourself that's strong enough to pull you through those tough times so that you keep going, so that you don't get stuck pulling back and forgetting about why you're doing this. I said earlier that dabbling will rob you of your time and productivity. And I want to explain why that happens. So if you've done much reading on productivity, time management, all that kind of stuff, you know that there's a cost to changing gears, right? That getting into a task takes a bunch of time. This happens for different reasons, whether it's getting the software and the websites open, or if you're a writer like myself, the procrastination that goes into it can actually play a big role. All of us, we have this lag that goes into starting a task and kind of switching tasks. And what happens when you're doing multiple things, let's say you're trying to juggle 4 different projects. You have a part-time job, a freelancing job, you're trying to have an online course and trying to write a book. You know, that's kind of the common thing I hear from a lot of people. Is if you're doing all that, let's say you have 6 productive hours in the day, which is a bit of a stretch for a lot of us. And I don't mean 6 hours at a desk, but I mean 6 hours where you're really producing, you're getting things done. Because there's a lot of kind of warm-up time and break time and stuff like that. So let's say you have 6 hours. In theory, if you're doing 4 things, that should give you an hour and a half per project. But it never works that way, right? When we change gears, each time we lose a percentage of productivity. Now, chalk it up whatever percent you want to give it. Let's say you're losing 20% every time you change gears. When you go from one thing where you have 100% of your focus, you add 2. Now, maybe each of those is getting 40% and 20% there is getting lost to transitions, to distractions, to other things. Throw in a third, maybe you're down to 25%, 20% for each of these things. I would guess that for a lot of people trying to juggle 4 projects at once, from my own experience when I've made this mistake, you're maybe getting 40% productivity out of yourself. And that's a big problem, because the other problem with dabbling is it's robbing you of your success. And here's how that happens. Anything you're trying to do, if you're trying to work for yourself, guess what? We live in an open economy. That means there's competition. And anything worth doing is going to have competition. The more appealing the industry you want to enter is, the harder it will be to compete because it's more appealing, right? There's not as many people applying for jobs delivering garbage in the slums as there are applying for jobs to be like the poster boy for, I don't know, cotton candy. And your job is to eat cotton candy all day. It makes sense. There's more competition for the things people want to do more. So if you're only giving a quarter of yourself to each of your projects, and really, because we know of how the time management works out, That means you're really only giving 10, maybe 15% of yourself to each of those projects. How will you compete in any of those areas with 15% of you? I couldn't do it. I absolutely couldn't do it. I don't know anyone who could do it. Because you'll be competing with the people who are giving 100% of themselves. So 10, 15% of you versus 100% of them. They're driven, they've cut off all other options, they have no distractions, and they're giving all their time and energy. And you, 15%, who's going to win this outcome, right? Now, the other thing that happens is if you have multiple options and you're dabbling, you're way more likely to quit. There's a great quote I love from Will Smith, and it's, "Why have a plan B? It distracts from plan A." And if you have a plan A, B, C, and D, not only are you distracting from all of them from each other, but you're also giving yourself an easy out. You ever notice how there's all these stories of millionaires and success stories, and it always seems like they pulled it off right after they were in their low? Not all the time, but a lot of the stories are that way. The company was against the wall, they needed more funding, they were about to go bankrupt, and then they kept going, and they pulled it off. Well, there's something to that, right? There's always highs and lows in business. And the people who go through the lows and keep going, who have that grit, tend to be the people who succeed because they push through the tough times. There's always a dip before success. There's a struggle, there's that last push. In relationships even, this is a term that's used in counseling, where often as you're resolving an issue between a couple, that's when there will be the most turmoil, the most tension. Things have to get worse before they get better as you deal with that stuff. And it happens in business, right? Now, if you have one option, you're doing one thing, when it gets tough, you keep going because you don't want to quit. Quitting is looked down upon in our society, right? We don't want to quit, so we keep going. But when you have 4 options, you're not quitting, you're shifting your focus. It's a way we can lie to ourselves, because I've done this too. Please know I've done this before. When we have other options, we can lie to ourselves and not be quitting, but I'm going to put this on hold for now. I'm going to adjust my focus. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to, look at, focusing more on this area. Whatever we want to tell ourselves, it's a lie. We're quitting, but we're not quitting, right? And so what happens is, let's say you have 4 options and option B has tons of promise. It's great, but it starts to get a little hard. It starts to get tough. Now, well, normally you would just stick to it. You would fight through and you would turn option B into a success. Now, you also have option A, C, and D. So why not just kind of drop B? Because it's not comfortable, it's not fun, it's not easy right now. So you drop it and you do the other 3. And that's why dabbling robs you of your success. Because option B there, you may have been on the cusp of big success. You might have been about to turn the corner and get exactly where you needed to be to turn into something huge. And you quit because you had other options and you were invested in too many different places. So people will look at me and say, well, you've published 12 books, you have 8 training courses up there, you have all this different stuff you're doing. How can you tell me not to dabble? I have published 12 books. I am not currently trying to write 12 books. Actually, right now, I am not trying to write 1 book. I had one in mind and I was working with an editor on it. And then I realized that I was splitting my time too much between this training that I really wanted to make and the book. And I decided that I'm going to just fully put the book on hold. Not do a little bit, not whatever, but it's on hold until I finish my current project. So that's the difference. You can have a ton of things in your portfolio, in your past, or that you manage, but you don't do them all at the same time. You build one, and then you build the next, and then you build the next. And that's how you can have all these different things, but not be dabbling and not be spreading yourself too thin. So the other night I was having dinner with a friend here in Prague, and he's had this crazy success recently, so much, so well deserved. He decided back in February that he wanted to really focus on building a channel on YouTube around politics. He's someone who's into video editing and design and really into politics and had some opinions on it he wanted to be sharing and things like that. and he decided he wanted to go all into YouTube. And so that's what he did. With no prior experience on YouTube, anything like that, he jumped full in and started his channel. And since February, so from February to March, I was kind of watching it. He'd get, a couple hundred views a video, things like that. By April, he was up to 1,000 subscribers. Then May up to about same thing, maybe 2,000, something like that. And then we met up to talk 2 weeks ago, and he had 20,000 subscribers, which is huge growth. If you don't know kind of YouTube and that, to have 20,000 subscribers within your first 6 months is huge. Then last night, or a few nights back when we were out, he was telling me he's past 40,000. That kind of growth is insane. And what we started talking about is how amazing it feels to focus, to just do one thing at a time, right? Before he was juggling a bunch of different projects, and now he's just doing YouTube. And to wake up and just only think of that one thing, to focus on it and to do it, it's an amazing feeling. And I know this because I go through periods of really focusing, like just gonna write a book, that's all I'm doing, and periods of dabbling. And I know that when I'm really focused in, it's an incredible feeling that you're going somewhere, that you have a direction, that every minute you spend working, you're producing something. Whereas when you're dabbling, when you're doing a bunch of things at once, I always feel like I'm drained, like I'm putting in this time, but I don't exactly know where it goes. I'll look back on a month or 2 months and say, what did I really accomplish then? How much actually got done? I don't mean how many hours did I work, but what was accomplished? Did I get new customers? Did I increase my income? Did I reach more people? What happened? So in this video, we focused on two main things. First, on making a decision before you're 100% ready, using the 70% rule. And using this as a tool for building your experience and building the knowledge you have about yourself. So that way you can improve your gut instincts and your intuition, so that in the future you can make decisions easier and easier just by trusting yourself and your own experience. And then I talked about dabbling. And there's a reason I included dabbling here with the 70% rule, is that if you're dabbling, even using the 70% rule, making decisions, that if you're dabbling and you're doing a lot of things at once, you're going to limit the amount that you can improve your gut instinct and your intuition, because you're giving yourself all these outs and you don't have clear failure points. So we learn a lot when we fail, but we have to acknowledge we failed. And so when you're dabbling, like we discussed, if you have all these different options and you just sort of turn away from one, so you don't admit, oh, this failed or this didn't work or I'm quitting this, you don't gain that experience. So you just keep dabbling. And that's why I see people that, when we were all 21 and starting out on our entrepreneurial roots, we all kind of dabbled a bit. And I see some of the people and they're still dabbling. They're in their 30s now and they're still dabbling. And that's because they've never learned. They've never given themselves the ability to try something, go all in and fail. And so dabbling not only robs us of our experience and our ability to build this intuition, but it also, as we discussed, robs us of our time and our potential success, because we often will end up quitting way too early because we give ourselves all these exit paths. So one of the best ways to fix this is by giving yourself focused periods of time, weeks, months, or even years, on one thing at a time. Bring that to fruition and then move on to the next project. By doing so, you'll give yourself 100% of your energy and your focus, and you'll get 100% of the experience and the learning from that. Now, of course, when you focus on just one thing, it's going to bring up fear, because there's a fear of failure, there's a fear of rejection, there's a fear of loss, because you just have this one option. It's like falling in love, right? It's scary. If you fall in love, you're setting yourself up to be hurt. But what are you going to do? Never fall in love? Come on, that's ridiculous. You got to go for it and just know that it could happen and face those fears. Now, when it comes to falling in love, we usually have enough positive things fighting that fear, right? All right, I feel fear and worry that we could break up, but I feel crazy madly in love and there's some naughty stuff and like laughing and all this good stuff, right? So usually we pull towards love. But we don't always have that in business, all that goodness pulling us right away, because a lot of business is working towards kind of a later goal and overcoming these hurdles. Well, in the next video, I want to discuss how you can overcome this fear using the turning pro mindset, how you can adjust your thinking and adjust your behavior so that you're not only able to produce more, but you're able to keep going through the lows, through the self-doubts, through the fear, and keep producing and keep moving forward. And whether you're going through a high where you can very easily get distracted, or a low where you can get fearful and end up changing your mind or quitting, whether you're going through that high or that low, I'm going to show you how you can use this mindset shift to keep going forward. I'm also going to look at how turning pro can be very good for business in terms of your income, your client relationships, and just about everything else you're doing. If you haven't yet, do subscribe. When you do so, you're going to get first access to the next video. You're also going to get an invitation for an upcoming live event where over a webinar you'll have a chance to interact with me, and I'm also going to go through some of my very best material on freelancing and working for yourself. So please do that, and I will catch you in the next video. Till next time, to your freedom, catch you somewhere in the world. Have an awesome day. Ciao.